Ayo, keep it high, keep it tight. It's J-Morse, Review Guy, back to bring you another video. And we've made it, boys. We're at the end of list week, and this is the big video that I have been leading up to, that I have been waiting for, that I knew from the get-go was going to be the last one. And hopefully you enjoy this. Hopefully it ends up coming out as well as I envision it as I'm recording. And I think you guys have already seen the title, obviously. You can go watch all of the other list week videos. They're up on the channel. You can go watch those, like them if you want, subscribe if you haven't already, if you still haven't. But anyways, let's get right into the video. So this is my top 30, yes, top 30 favorite rock and metal albums. This was a given. This was obvious. This is a music-related channel. I do a lot of rock and metal reviews, and I haven't done this list already. I've talked about bands, but I have not talked about albums. So here's how this is going to work. Quite a few of these I have not reviewed. There are only 2 albums on this list, as far as I know, that were released this year. I have a list to the side and a lot in my mind, so what I'm going to try to do is move very quickly with these because I don't want it to be a bloated video that's like an hour long. So we're going to I'll give very brief thoughts on every single album, and hopefully you guys can follow. So, number 30 is going to be Death Will Reign by the band Impending Doom. So, Impending Doom came for this year as well with an amazing deathcore album, The Sin and Doom Volume 2. This is a great Christian deathcore band, and they have brutal riffing, and their riffage is amazing, their drum work's amazing, and the vocals, the gutturals are great. Good job to the vocalist. It's a great classic album that I go back to regularly. So, number 29 is Artificial Selection by Dance Gavin Dance. So I was surprised by this because this is one of the albums that came out this year. I am in love with this album. There was no way that I wasn't going to be able to put this on this list because it's such a great album, and the vocals are just fantastic all around. I think that both the clean and unclean vocalists do a fantastic job. It has a catchy feel. The post-hardcore math rocky feels is great. The experimentation is great. And overall, it's just an entertaining album with a lot of content. Number 28 is going to be Omen by Antester. So this is the only black metal album on the list, and it's an unblack metal album. This is a Christian black metal band, and I really like the lyricism compiled with the black metal sound, and I think that besides that, they just overall do the black metal sound a lot of justice, and I think that they are kind of underground, less well known, but they're still great. Number 27 is going to be Metallica's Ride the Lightning. And before we go any further, I wanted to also state something that I forgot to state in the intro. I'm limiting bands to only have 1 album per, because if not, then the whole list would just be like a couple bands that I like the most. So these are separate bands, 1 entry per. So moving on from there, number 27, obviously, Metallica, Ride the Lightning. Yeah, Ride the Lightning is my favorite Metallica album, and that's probably surprising, but I just think it's classic. I think it has some amazing tracks. I think that Metallica really came through with a lot of catchy tracks, a lot of good tracks, and it was right in the middle of kind of softer, more melodic tracks with full-on thrash metal, and I think it came out really well. Number 26, Unearth's Through the Eyes of Fire. So just a classic, amazing metalcore band, and one of the kind of consistent ones that have just remained with their sound over the years. I was kind of torn between this one and March, but this one won it over because it's just such a great metalcore album from start to finish, and it's pretty self-explanatory if you've listened to it and like metalcore. Number 25 is going to be Slow Death by Carnifex. Carnifex, fantastic deathcore band, one of my favorite deathcore bands. There was just so many Carnifex albums and so many deathcore albums that I could have chose from, but this one was the one that really, I think, speaks the most to me, and it has the best lyricism, and it has the best riffing, and I think that, like I said, the lyrics are very good on this album, and they're very deep, they're very emotional, and not what you'd necessarily think of when you would think of this band. So, number 24 is Elements Part 1 by Stratovarius, so the only power metal album on this list. This was one of the first albums, especially in this genre, that I really fell in love with, and it's a band and an album that I don't talk about nearly enough. I am not usually that big of a power metal fan. It's not a genre that I go out of my way to listen to. But Stratovarius, honestly, they do a great job on this album, and all of Stratovarius's music and albums are great. And I wasn't sure of which one to put, but then I was like, I was thinking in my mind, so many tracks that I used to just love and I fell in love with came from this album, and I had to put it here. Number 23, Meteora by Linkin Park. The first Linkin Park album that I ever owned, has some of the first Linkin Park songs that I ever listened to. Great new metal. They were starting to blend it with their kind of rap rocky type of sound, but they were still heavy. They weren't like Hybrid Theory heavy, but they were still keeping up the heaviness, and I think it's a great album and has some really deep lyricism, as Linkin Park was known for, but especially on this album. I just love Faint, Numb, just some great songs on this album. Under kind of the same umbrella, but more in the alternative department, we have Next by Seven Dust at number 22. So I remember the first time that I heard the song Ugly from the album, and I was like, I can't even remember how I found it out. It was so long ago that I was young. I remember that, and I listened to it, and I was like, this is actually really good. And I looked deeper into it, and I listened to the album, and it just is a great album. And their alternative rock slash metal sound is so great, and it's great to see like a really good African American metal vocalist. It seems like there's not enough of them, and it seems like it's the type of outlet that you don't see many of, but the ones that I do know of really kill it. And speaking of that, number 21, Killswitch Engage, As Daylight Dies. It's not the end of Heartache, surprisingly. As Daylight Dies is the first Killswitch Engage album that I ever owned. A lot of these have nostalgia behind them, I'm sorry, but this album, to me, is just superior to the end of Heartache. There are classics on that album, but there's just... I'm just, you know what's bad is I'm sitting here thinking of some of the songs in my mind, and I'm like playing them out in my head, and I'm just like in awe as I'm doing the video. It's kind of funny. I think that's self-explanatory. It's just a great metalcore album that has some great clean singing. Howard Jones is a beast, and I really miss him in Killswitch Engage. So, number 20, Shadows Are Security by the band As I Lay Dying. So along the similar vein, you got metalcore, but metalcore in a way that is just super balls to the wall heavy, and from start to finish, this album really kills it. It's really more of the heavier side of metalcore, less singing, less clean singing, more rougher vocals, growly vocals, and it goes to show how diverse metalcore can be. So, number 19, All That Remains with The Fall of Ideals. So, I gotta say, The Fall of Ideals, I go back to this album so much. If you have been with the channel for a while, This Calling used to be my outro song. So that's kind of cool. It was my outro song, and it's a great song. So this album it kills it. It's metalcore. It's great. It's great metalcore. So number 18, the other album that came out this year, came out near the start of the year, A Complex of Cages by Barren Earth. This was pretty much, I'll go ahead and spoil it. I'm thinking this might be album of the year for me. There's a reason that it's this high up on my full album list of all time. It's that good. Barren Earth's opus styling, where they kind of mix folk with metal, with death metal, with progressive metal, and they throw in progressive with death metal, and then they toss in folk metal and folk music, and it just comes out so good that I will be hard-pressed to find an album that beats it out. That's all I gotta say. Self-explanatory. Number 17, In Full Darkness with Adversary Omnipotent. I covered it in an album review on the channel if you want to go find that. It was a bit ago, but this is just a great blend of black and death metal. As the Artisan era does a lot. I mean, Augury released an album, The Elusive Golden Age, I believe it's called, earlier this year, and that was a really good album too. But the Artisan era loves to release these black death metal hybrids that really are just great, and this is a super epic album that comes with tons of story. They created this whole world for an album, man, and you gotta respect them for that. As a writer, at least I do. Number 16, Amon Amarth with Yom's Viking. People need to stop calling this Yom's Viking. It's Yom's Viking. Do you guys even know Scandinavian mythology? No, I'm just kidding. But this is just a great melodic death metal album. My favorite melodic death metal album, to be frank, definitely. It's one of their more recent ones, and there's a lot of discography behind Amon Amarth. They have some great songs, great albums behind them, but this is just the one that kind of spoke to me the most, and I listened to it the most, and I own it. So, yeah. All right, number 15, Mirror Reaper by Bell Witch, a semi-newer one, very high on the list for a reason. If you watched my review of this album, and I've even thought about giving it a re-review, this is just a great doom metal album, a funeral doom metal album. And after Adrian, one of the members, he passed away, it was just, you had a funeral doom metal band that had went through a loss. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. And it has such great storytelling. Adrian's vocals, when they come on, I believe like the part 3 or something, it's called like Words of the Dead. It's so haunting, and this whole album is so long. It's one song, and it's like 83 minutes long, and the CD is a 2-disc set. I've already showed it many times, but yes, I own it. I own Mirror Reaper, and it's just a great album from start to finish. Number 14, Phenomena by Within the Ruins. By far my favorite Within the Ruins album, obviously. You can guess that, I can say that all of the albums from the bands on this list are my favorite from the band because I'm limiting it to one per. So, yeah. Phenomena is just iconic for me. When it comes to deathcore and progressive metalcore and progressive metal, just that intro tapping riff where it's like, they drew first blood just like I knew they were. I've quoted that so many times. I should just make that my outro song. I've used it so many times already. Just a great jilted guitar playing, very djenty before djent was very popular, but it's not really djenty because it has this spacey feel, this atmospheric feel that really goes above and beyond. Number 13, Collide with the Sky by Pierce the Veil. So, see, here's the thing about all these albums. Here's the thing. A lot of these albums, they have something about them that really is nostalgic for me. And I remember King for a Day was one of the first like post-hardcore / metalcore metal type songs that just really got me into the genre. And this is definitely their best album in my opinion. It's the one that at least I enjoy the most, and the one that kind of sticks out to me the most. So number 12 is Sleeping with Ghosts by Placebo, specifically the version that comes with the covers. Placebo is the most underrated yet beloved alternative rock bands ever. Now, let that simmer in your mind. It's that contradicting. They're not the most well-known, but they're well-known enough to where people know them. And Running Up That Hill, I forget who they covered it from. Is it like Kate Bush? That's probably very wrong. I'm so sorry. But that song, that cover, is so haunting. And the lead singer, I'm not 100% sure of his name, but his vocals are they're nasally, but they work, and it's just a great album all around. So, number 11 is All We Know of Heaven, All We Need of Hell by PVRIS or Paris. So, what can I say about this album? I've already done a review of it, and it's a good album. It's a really good album. It has a lot of great electronic feels. It has a lot of... See, you could argue that this isn't even at times a rock album, but I definitely think it could be considered a rock album. Anyone that's saying it's not is just not a big fan of electronic music that gets merged. So, number 10, along the same lines, New Demons by I See Stars. As much as I kind of like Treehouse and it was a transformative period, New Demons still takes the cake for me. It was at the height of their electronic sound. They had polished themselves. Their previous albums were a bit more I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? They were good, but they were a little more cringy. I mean, you had albums, I believe one was called 3D, one was called The End of the World Party. They were good albums. They were fairly decent, but they weren't as good as New Demons. New Demons was when they had perfected the sound that they were going for. So number 9, and you might be surprised by this being kind of low on the list, given how much I praised this band and talked about them, but I was so torn with Asking Alexandria's spot if I was going to give it to Stand Up and Scream or From Death to Destiny. The one I go back to more is From Death to Destiny. That's the Asking Alexandria album that I go back to the most. It's the one that I feel like has the most diversity. I mean, you get a track that's just so heavy, like Killing You, but has that booming metalcore chorus, and you have Moving On, which is sung, and it's just this hard rock anthem, and you have so much diversity on the album that you can't go wrong. And I don't really know what else to say. It's a great album. Number 8, Born of Osiris's Tomorrow We Die Alive. This is pure nostalgia, and I just made all of the Born of Osiris fans just go crazy in the comments, because The Discovery is their magnum opus by many people's standards, and by a critique standpoint, it probably is the better album. But Tomorrow We Die Alive has so much nostalgia tied to it. I remember the first time I heard Machine, it blew my mind. It made me just so into it, and it was so just gritty and just Machine. I remember I didn't like it at first, and then it stuck in my mind. This was back when I was getting into metal, and it stuck in my mind, and I went back the next day, and I listened to it, and I fell in love with the album, and I wanted to own it. I ended up getting Soul Sphere, ended up getting Tomorrow We Die Alive. I just recently got the Eternal Reign. I want to get the Discovery. I want to finish my discography, because Born of Osiris truly is a great band. So, number 7, my highest deathcore album, Eclipse by Veil of Maya. I've praised this album so much. My top 5 favorite deathcore bands, you know, if you watch that, you will get the spoiler that they're my favorite deathcore band too. And Eclipse is a short album, but from start to finish, it's fantastic. And I go back to it. I cannot say just how much I've went back to this album. It's so good. I love this album from start to finish. It's a great deathcore album. In my opinion, the best deathcore album, but that's me. Number 6, Clairvoyant by The Contortionist. Just great melodic, progressive metal. I don't really even mind that they don't do growls or screams anymore, because this is a drifty album. This is a trippy album. This is the type of thing that, like, if I took drugs, which obviously I don't, but if you were someone that took like LSD and you listened to this album, you could probably trip. I mean, this is like Pink Floyd level quality of psychedelic type of music, but for a new generation. I mean, some of these passages are fantastic. Godspeed, that's such a good track. I used to go to sleep with that track. I would just have my laptop and I'd put my headphones on and I'd go to sleep to it, and it put me to sleep really fast because it's that drifty. But they're singing in it. It's just great from start to finish. Moving on from there, number 5 is Dark Before Dawn by Breaking Benjamin. So yeah, they're this high up, and I just love Dark Before Dawn. It's gonna take, I'm just gonna say it, they're not gonna outdo this album for me. Ember was a really good album, and the previous albums are really good albums, but Dark Before Dawn for me just seals the deal as being my favorite Breaking Benjamin album for a lot of reasons, and I just love it from start to finish. There's so much diversity, and they have so many great tracks. You got The Great Divide, you got Hollow, you have Ashes of Eden, Defeated, Angels Fall, Failure. Breaking the Silence, Close to Heaven. There's so many good songs on this album that I could pretty much quote every single one of them and say they're great. That's worth being on the list. Number 4, The Anthropocene Extinction by Cattle Decapitation. How many times do I have to cover this band before people understand that I love them? Vegan metal band, extreme vegan metal band, death grind band, grindcore band, gore grind band, great band, and it's just, they're great. A lot of people would probably put the Monolith of Inhumanity above Anthropocene Extinction, and I can understand that, but the Anthropocene Extinction to me is their more polished album. It's the better album. It has more experimentation, and I like it for it. Number 3, The Wall by Pink Floyd. Moving on to number 2. No, I'm just kidding. Do I need to explain this? This is such a classic album, and I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, as anyone would know. And if you follow the channel, you will know that I am a big Pink Floyd fan, and this was hard for me to choose. The Dark Side of the Moon is great, and then Wish You Were Here is great. Animals is great. Metal is great. Atom Heart Mother is great. The Division Bell is great. I was just going down the list, and then I was like, wait, that's not true. The Wall is their best album, and that's pretty much it. The 2-disc set, I own it, and if you do listen to the whole thing, it tells a story. It's so great. They based a movie off of it. There's a reason they did that. All right. Number 2, and here comes the shock and awe. Number 2, Drift by Era. What? Jay Morris, isn't Era your favorite band? Yeah, Era's my favorite band, but that doesn't mean they made my favorite album. Drift is my favorite album from them, and it's kind of surprising because a lot of people would put Augment, and it's apples and oranges at this point. I love all of their albums, obviously, even their earlier ones like their self-titled EP and Andromeda. I've covered almost all their albums. I just need to do their first EP, debut EP, but Drift to me is the one that I have the most love for. I mean, Luminous, the intro tapping riff stays in my mind. I can't even do it. I'm not even going to try to embarrass myself by trying to do it. But it's just a great album from start to finish, and it flows so consistently. Augment sometimes would feel a bit samey, as well as Impulse, but Drift to me feels very different from track to track, and I have such high hopes for Neon, man. Breach and Disarray are great tracks. I'm probably going to do a track review for not Disarray, I already did one for Disarray, for Breach. And I did a lyric video for that, my first lyric video. That's how much I liked it. So, if Era was number 2, who's number 1? Well, number 1 is going to be That's the Spirit by Bring Me the Horizon. Yeah, I want to tie this so bad. In fact, you know what? Screw it, I'm tying this. Number 1 is Bring Me the Horizons. There is a hell, believe me, I've seen it. There's a heaven, let's keep it a secret. And That's the Spirit. I could not choose. With this whole list, it was very easy for me to say which was my favorite album. But these are so, it's funny because it's so different. It's like one of their heaviest albums and then their least heaviest album. But I love both of these albums for different reasons, man. There's a Hell, Believe Me, I've Seen It. Such a great album from start to finish. Such great tracks. They're just so good. And to be honest, if I had to pick one of the two, they'd both be above Era. That's the thing. That's the Spirit, though. It has so many good tracks on it, so many catchy tracks, and I know they're not as heavy anymore, but they're still so good. And I have high hopes for their new album whenever it comes out. Their next album, I should say, not their new album. It will be their new album, but those two albums, I could not decide, so I'm just going to lump them together. I'm breaking my own rules, and I'm lumping the two together. So there's a Hell, Believe Me, I've Seen It. There's a Heaven, Let's Keep It a Secret. And That's the Spirit. Take my number 1 spot for my favorite albums of all time in the rock and metal department. And this is bittersweet. We did this week. I put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of planning, a lot of writing to prepare this list week. And I've been working on this list since near the start. I have a Google Doc, if you're wondering what I'm looking at over there. When I look over there, I'm looking at the list to make sure I get everything right, because it's kind of hard to remember all 30 in a row. But I've been working on this list, and it's if you don't agree, you don't agree. It's fine. Your musical taste is different. If you think some of the bands that I listed here have better albums, let me know in the comment section below and let me know yours. But I would consider List Week a success. It was fun. It took a lot of work. I bet that I probably feel very tired after editing the video that you just watched. But overall, I like List Week, and I would be willing to do it again eventually, but for right now, we're going back to album reviews, track reviews, all that good stuff, music discussions, more casual videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for tuning into List Week. Thank you for liking the videos. Thank you for subscribing if you haven't, hitting that bell. Thank you for the comments on the List Week videos. As always, I'll shout you out if you comment down below. Thank you for following each one. I hope you enjoyed List Week, and if you'd like to see another List Week in the future, let me know. And yeah, I think that's it. So, thank you for following me for these 8 episodes. I'll talk to you guys next time. But until then, my name is Jim Morris, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell. Roll the credits.
Oh no, what's your mama gonna say when I tell her that I broke no heart? It's just things not the way that they used to be. Oh no, now you crying on the bathroom floor and I guess it's the end. Well, I lost my mind and I lost my